My brother discovered something at the bottom of the ocean and now he's missing. My brother Edwin was in a very secretive, niche line of work. Anytime someone asked him what he did, he would tell them he was like a marine biologist of sorts. I always knew he wasn't a marine biologist, although I was never sure of what he actually did. He told me once that he was legally not allowed to tell anyone his exact job position or the type of work he did, nor was he allowed to tell anyone the name of the organization that he worked for. He talked about his job a lot, for someone who was not supposed to do that, but all his stories were vague enough that we would never really know what he was talking about. He would tell us about a coworker of his who saw sharks in the ocean a few feet away while they worked, or about how he accidentally fell off the boat one day and had to get a new cell phone. But he never specifically talked about the work he was doing, or the coworker's name, or any other type of identifying information. We were all used to this secrecy after years of him working in this same field, but that didn't stop the confusion and questions that we all had after he disappeared. They wouldn't tell us the exact circumstances that surrounded his disappearance, or where he went missing, what he was doing, who reported it, or if there were any witnesses. Nothing. The only response we got was that law enforcement was doing their best to solve this case, but that they couldn't guarantee that they would find Edwin dead or alive. We did get a letter in the mail about a month after we went missing from someone called John Smith who claimed to be Edwin's boss. In the letter, John claimed that Edwin had gone missing while he was out on a boat doing research. Along with the letter, there was a check for $20,000. But 20 grand couldn't bring Edwin back. He was presumed dead after a while, and we had a funeral for an empty casket. Everyone was angry and confused, but there was really nothing that we could do at this point. Exactly 1 month after Edwin's funeral I received a package in the mail. The return address was Edwin's, and the box was big and heavy, with a fragile warning on the top and sides. It was sitting on my porch when I went outside for my morning walk, and after struggling a bit, I managed to drag it into my living room and open it. The box was filled with books and journals, as well as other random items, and there was an envelope sitting at the top, taped to one of the journals, addressed to me. "Tina, read this first." I carefully peeled the tape off the journal and opened the envelope, which hadn't been sealed shut. Inside I found a note that had been handwritten on notebook paper. I recognized Edwin's all-caps writing when I unfolded it and sat down on the floor near the box to read it. "Tina, if you're reading this, then something probably happened to me. I think they might try to tell you that I'm dead, but I'm not. They know I'm not, but they aren't allowed to tell you otherwise. Maybe they'll give you hope and tell you I'm missing. I technically will be missing, and they might try to look for me. In fact, you might try to look for me, or maybe my parents will, but you won't find me. It won't matter how long you search or how well you search, or if you hire the best private investigator in the world, you will never find me. Not because I don't want to be found, because believe me, I will want to go back home, but because nobody but me knows the exact location of where I will be. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Edwin, if you know where you are going to be, why wouldn't you just tell me? What's the point of sending me this stuff and not telling me where you'll be? You have to believe me when I say that it's for your own safety. You can't unlearn things, Tina. Once you know something, you know it forever. It'll be in your head for the rest of your life and you won't be able to escape it. Sometimes, ignorance really is bliss, and in this case, the more clueless you are about my exact whereabouts, the better. I had my lawyer set this up in the event of my disappearance. By the time you get this, I will have been missing for over a year. This is how I planned it. Any sooner and someone would have suspected something. I don't want people coming after you, but I want you to know what I found. I need someone to know what I found. This might sound stupid, and I'm being a hypocrite, having just told you all that bullshit about ignorance being bliss, but I need to warn people. Somebody has to be ready for what's coming. I picked you because we've always been close, and you've never doubted me. You've always been the type of person to go along with my insane plans without even questioning them. Remember when we were 10, and I thought it would be fun to buy a kid's swimming pool and use it to ride down the river behind our grandparents' cabin? It was a stupid idea obviously, but you did it anyway, and when we couldn't get back to shore for a few minutes you helped me figure out how to get back instead of yelling at me and calling me stupid, even though it was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I hope you still feel that way about my ideas. I hope you're still willing to help me, even when it's dangerous and stupid. I know this is a selfish thing to ask, but I could really use your help, Tina, and I hope you at least think about it. Edwin. I set the letter off to the side, immediately deciding to help Edwin with whatever he had gotten himself into. I grabbed the first journal I saw and opened it to the first page. All the journals looked pretty much the same, brown, leather-bound, and old. On the first page, there was a year written in the top corner of the page. The first journal was from over 4 years ago. On the next page, there were a few sketches of a boat, as well as something that looked like an island, although there were no identifying details mentioned anywhere on the page. I flipped the page and found a short entry behind the sketches. Most of it was notes and comments about Plato's dialogues and the lost city of Atlantis. It seemed like Edwin was doing research on Plato, or at least on the city of Atlantis. The rest of the journal contained more sketches and random quotes and notes about Atlantis. A few pages and he began to research lost civilizations, and I found a few notes on the lost colony of Roanoke and the Anasazi. On one page there was a list titled Lost Cities which contained Atlantis and Roanoke, along with around 50 others in different languages that I had never heard of before. I was confused as to why he was looking into lost civilizations if his job mainly involved the ocean. At least that's what I assumed from the things he had told us. The first couple of journals that I flipped through were mainly research. Most of the entries follow the same format: research and random notes and sketches about one specific lost civilization, followed by some sketches about the area in which the civilization was located, and in most cases, there were even theories about what had happened to them. He used almost one full notebook for each civilization that he was researching, and I spent almost the entire day looking through journal after journal. I decided to take a break in the evening to eat and shower before I went back to look through more. There had to be at least 60 journals in the box, amongst other things that I hadn't even gotten to yet. So far, I had found no explanation for what it was that Edwin was doing, and at one point, I started to think that maybe this wasn't even work-related. Maybe Edwin had some weird obsession with lost civilizations and had taken it upon himself to look into them. Inside of the journals, however, I found a folded-up piece of paper with an official-looking seal on it. The seal was gold and in the shape of waves inside a circle, with a small X at the top. It was a letter addressed to Edwin, which mentioned something called Project 22.4. The documents contained no identifying information as to what Project 22.4 was, only that it was assigned to Edwin over 3 years ago, and that he was supposed to research the details of the case and track down leads in order to discover the truth behind one of our organization's greatest mysteries, as the letter read. It was signed by someone, but the name had been redacted with blank ink. I continued to look through the journal, where I was able to piece together a few different entries to learn that Edwin was planning a few different trips to an undisclosed location X in order to gather more information for the project. The entries were vague, and had I not found the letter, I might not have realized that Edwin had planned out visits to this location, and had actually gone back a number of times. I was also able to gather that he had taken someone with him, although the person was unnamed and only referenced twice, once in a sketch of the boat Edwin was going to be taking on this trip, and the second time when he made a note about his phone being messed up due to water damage on the trip. I thought back to the stories he told us about his mystery co-worker and figured that whoever went on this trip with him was the same person he told us stories about. Although I didn't think Edwin would have listed any personal information about this co-worker, I thought about attempting to track them down. Since they had taken so many trips with Edwin and worked with him on this secret project, they might know where he went or what he was doing on the day of his disappearance. However, in the entry about Edwin's fourth trip out to the mystery location, he noted that on the way there, the boat became stuck at some point, making a small note about being thankful he had help and was able to get the boat moving again. Further down the page, when Edwin wrote about leaving the location with no concrete information for the project, he once again mentions the boat getting stuck, only this time, he states boat was much harder to move by myself. Took almost half an hour to get it back to normal, got back later than anticipated. From that line, I was able to conclude that whoever was taking these trips with Edwin had possibly died, or gone missing on that day, making them a dead end. I fell asleep on the living room floor that night and woke up to the sunlight gleaming through my living room windows. I got up, sore from being on the hard floor all night, and started my coffee machine, taking the journal with me to read while I made breakfast and drank my coffee. Edwin went back to the mystery location over 10 times, sometimes mentioning a new piece of evidence that he found, but never stating what it was or what he was attempting to prove. The last 10 or so pages of the journal were empty, so I tossed it on one of my couches, along with all the other ones I had already read. I still had a couple more journals to go through, and I wasn't even at the ones written within the last 2 years yet. I dug through the box a bit before I found an old iPhone box. I picked it up, expecting it to be an old phone, but the rattling inside the box told me otherwise. I took the top off to find that it contained about 10 different flash drives inside. I ran to my bedroom to grab my laptop, and sat back down on the floor, grabbing a random flash drive from the box. None of them were labeled, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to find. When I opened the first one, there was only one folder on the drive titled 12.4. I clicked on the folder and it opened. It contained one photo only, and it was a photo of Edwin's ID card from work. The name of the company had been blurred out, and the only information available was Edwin's photo, date of birth, and employee ID number. I grabbed another drive and set the first one aside. The next one contained 3 folders, the first 2 titled Folder 1 and Folder 2, and the third titled 040412. I opened Folder 1 first, which contained about 10 photos. I scrolled through each picture, but there wasn't really anything interesting or useful about them. The first 5 pictures were of the boat Edwin would take on his trips, and the rest were photos of the sky, the water, and the shore as they got further and further into the ocean. Folder 2 contained pretty much the same, only from a different day, as these photos appeared to have been taken on a cloudy day, whereas the others were taken on a sunnier day. I opened the last folder to find more pictures, but these seemed to be scans of different sketches. There were a few sketches of the boat and some sketches of coral and fish in the sea. The last sketch, however, was of a mermaid swimming underwater. The sketch was made from an aerial view, showing the back of the mermaid as it swam. I moved on to the next couple of flash drives, but most of them contained more photos or scans from various textbooks or sources that discussed more lost civilizations throughout time. I was on the last flash drive, which also contained photos, and I scrolled through more ocean sketches of fish, sharks, trash, and eventually mermaids. This drive had a lot more sketches of mermaids, male and female, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. In some sketches, they appeared to be doing underwater tricks of sorts, and in others, they were drawn tiny as if being seen from a great distance away. The last couple of sketches were less magical and more on the creepy side. There were a couple of detailed sketches of mermaids looking from the ocean floor, surrounded by dark water with only their glowing yellow eyes piercing through the dark. They were very well done and painted. It was honestly impressive. In another sketch, there was a mermaid who was half shielded by the dark but partially illuminated by a light source. Her face was grotesque, wrinkled, and peeling, as if she was decaying from being underwater for so long. There was a chunk of skin hanging off her cheekbone, and the skin around her left nostril was missing entirely. She had no hair on her face, no eyelashes or eyebrows, and her eyes were sunken into her face, and bright yellow, with large pupils that almost covered the entire yellow part. Her hair was long and flowy in the water, but at the same time, it looked thin and brittle. I scrolled to the next sketch and my heart sank to my stomach when I saw another sketch of a mermaid. This one was fully illuminated, which made her scarier to look at. She was topless, and all her exposed skin was wrinkly and peeling off of her body in large chunks. Her lips were split in random places, and her mouth was slightly open. She had no teeth, and her hair was falling out in clumps, leaving bald patches on her head. One of her hands was reaching towards me as if she was going to grab me and drag me down with her. She had no fingernails, and the skin on her fingers and hands was also peeling. Her mermaid tail was a sickening brown shade, like the color of rotting fruit, and looked like it would have a coarse, leathery texture to it. I moved on to the last sketch, which was of an underwater city, although it looked like something you would see in a dystopian film. It looked like the aftermath of a nuclear attack, with run-down buildings that had holes in them and one gust of wind away from crumbling. I could see a couple of mermaids in the distance, swimming through the city. I put all the drives back into the box and set the box on my couch along with the journals when I was done. I went back to the box and found an old cassette player that contained one cassette in it. It had already been rewound, and so I pressed play and waited. He's gone. Fuck. Okay. I recognized Edwin's voice immediately, his tick accent coming through on every word. It's April 4th, I came out here with my partner, we're working on project 22.4. We made it to the location, but something happened. Fuck, how do I explain this? I could hear water sloshing in the back. Okay, he's gone. That's it. I can't say more. Sorry, but I was told not to attempt a rescue if this happened, as was he. It's what he agreed to. The tape stopped there. I picked up the cassette player again and noticed that there was an envelope taped to the back of that as well, only it was torn and empty. I dug through the rest of the box and found another cassette tape at the bottom. I put it into the player and pressed play. This is my final report for project 22.4. This is Edwin Rodriguez. We found what you were looking for, it's right there where you told me it would be. But that's not necessarily good news. What you failed to realize, is that they would want revenge. They know what you did, and they're planning something big. I know I'm going to be sent back again, I know you want more proof, but just the stuff I've turned in, but actual physical evidence, but there's no way I will get away with that. I've turned in all my documents and research for project 22.4, and I'm done. I won't be coming back again. Don't go looking for them, instead, run. Go somewhere far away, far from the ocean. It won't save you, but it will buy you time. They're coming, they've been planning this for decades. None of us will survive, and I don't think we deserve to. Warn as many as you can, but know that if you do, they will come after you. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. Tell my parents that I love them. I dug through the rest of the box as I tried to figure out what Edwin had found, and why he was so scared. I found a folded piece of paper under one of the journals still in the box and carefully pulled it out. It was folded haphazardly, and I figured it must have been whatever had fallen out of the envelope behind the cassette player. As I got a closer look at it, I realized it wasn't just a piece of paper, but a photo. I carefully unfolded it, trying not to tear it. When I did, I froze in shock. I touched the photo to make sure that it was an actual photo, from an actual camera, but the date printed at the bottom of the photo proved that it was. I was looking at the same photo of the mermaid that I had seen before, on one of the flash drives, the one I had assumed was simply a sketch. But it wasn't a sketch, none of them had been. They were all real. And this is what Edwin was warning me about.